Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for joining us on a video to review Glasgow, a two-player game. It's been a little bit since Kristin and I produced a video. I don't think we've done this since the holidays, if I remember correctly, and it feels like forever ago, but we're excited to get back to the table. So welcome.
Yes.
All right, so diving into Glasgow. So just a quick reminder, the game came in at $30, I believe. You can find it online. And what can you get down to, Kristin?
I think 23 was the lowest we
Yeah.
saw it for. So between 23 and 30. So
Yep.
not too bad.
Exactly. So we're going to take a look at this game today. We're going to rate it on a couple of different categories. We're going to rate it on replayability, theme, the weight of the game / complexity, the comparable games. We'll take a look at what you might experience otherwise, and then value overall. So with that, just a quick reminder, we tend to rate things on a 1 through 12, 12 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. So Kristin, why don't you start us off? What did you think in terms of replayability or variability?
Surprisingly, I thought this was definitely one that's very replayable. I think we've got 5 or 6 games under our belt so far.
Five
Something
games.
like that.
Yep.
And each time it's, because the pieces change, because your positioning and the movement changes, it's felt completely different as far as what strategy is going to be. I mean, there's some basics that'll probably remain the same, the kinds of cities you prefer to build, although, again, that's a preference and a strategy. But I will say there have been times where I started this game and I felt like I got this one in the bag just based on how the movement and the way the tiles laid out, and sometimes it just felt like it wasn't going to be my game. But I say that in a positive way because I think that it is variable for being such a small, compact 2-player game and a fairly quick game at that.
I think that there's a fair amount of replayability, especially at the price point of $30.
Mm-hmm.
There are so the way the game is set up, and we'll show you this here in just a second. But the way the game's set up, there are 4 architects that you build buildings off of. Those are not any different. They're the same every time you go around. But the premise of the game is that you're in Glasgow and you're going down this river and you're hitting these different folks that you can do trade actions with to get, whether it's brick, steel, money, whiskey, or you can have special actions that will allow you to, say, clear out the buildings that are available to buy, and or maybe build a building out of sequence, something along those lines. You play with all of those tiles with the exception of 2 each time, and those are random every time you come about. And then the building wise, there is, a whole smattering of buildings, and effectively what you're trying to do is build a block of the city of Glasgow. So it's either a 5x4 grid or a 4x5 grid, and so you have 20 tiles that you're going to be putting out there, and there's probably 30 or so, 37 building tiles total. So you're not going to see the same buildings every time, and of course, it probably goes without saying, but I'll say it anyways. Buildings score differently depending on what you have you're up against. So overall, I think pretty decent replayability, especially when you consider the $30 price point. So if you're going to rate it, Kristin, where would you come down on it?
I would probably come around maybe an 8 or a 9. Go 8.5. Do we do half points?
We are now.
We do now.
What just happened?
8.5. That's it.
We're both cutting edge.
Final answer.
Cutting edge. There we
And
go.
I was just, I have to laugh because I was just looking at the box, and if you guys can see that, it says variable setup. They are correct. It does a variable setup, and so that's why I'm going to give it about an 8.5.
Yeah. I'm going to start getting big stickers like that so I can stick it on things. But
yes, it's very effective.
Yeah, so 8.5. I'd probably come in at an 8. I think normally games for me, variability, if you've got some, I call it a 7. This one I'm giving it an 8 because it's a pretty inexpensive game, and I think it's got a reasonable amount of variability without going over the top in terms of price point, things of that nature. So yeah, I call it an 8. Theme, where do you come down on this?
Probably a 7. Like, I like the idea of Glasgow. I like the buildings are neat, and you get different characters on the architects, and I know we'll show a setup, but you get little guys. But overall, when I was playing the game itself, I didn't really feel like I was paying attention to the theme at all. So I don't know that it necessarily added or detracted from the game. So because of that, I'd call it average. Did I say 7? I might say 6. Average, because it didn't detract. But to me, it didn't add to the gameplay at all. It was just kind of a background, if you will.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm gonna come in at a 4 on this, and I'll tell you why. If you just looked at this game, I don't know that you would be able to tell that you're in Glasgow and that you're trying to build a city and that there's a river involved. And
there's a river?
Yeah, that's what the circular ring of the
area
that you're looking at. And this just doesn't stick the landing for me on it. Doesn't mean it isn't a fun game. It's just the theme. I think you've got to squint really hard to find a theme in this.
I would agree.
And by squinting really hard, I mean it doesn't feel like it's really there.
Mm-hmm.
Not a terrible game. Just hard for me to see that. Okay, so weight of the game, Kristin. In terms of light, medium, heavyweight game, where would you put this?
It's a medium game. I think that the concept is simple, but the strategy can be more around the medium, because there's a couple of choices you have to make throughout. The movement is similar if you've ever played Takedo, right? It's similar to Takedo, and it seems simple enough that you would just move to the next available tile, but that's not always your best move. So you have to consider your movement, and then of course that of your opponents, which I think takes it from a easy to a medium there. Also your selection and placement of buildings. And like I said earlier, it can change depending on the game and where your placement is and what kind of resources you have. And so it's by no means simple. It's not super complicated. It's no scythe, but I do think that there's a decent amount of strategy required. So I'd go medium, on the lighter side of medium though.
Yeah, I think if I was to rate it in terms of complexity, I would probably put it at about a 4. That's where I'd come down on it. It's not hard to play. Mm-hmm. Essentially, Takedo's a great example. But if you're behind the leading person, meaning your opponent, because it is a 1 to 2 player game, then you get to take actions until you pass your opponent. Or also like patchwork, the same way with patchwork. The actions aren't, tough. You land on a square, you get the resources, or you do the action, and then you move on. There is some complexity in terms of, do I want to take the immediate action, or do I skip ahead and take something to prevent my opponent from grabbing it? But it's not ultra heavy, which I think in some cases is an advantage. And this game says it plays in about 30 minutes, and I think most of our plays were 15 to maybe 30 minutes if you really reached. And I don't feel like that was a bad thing.
No.
It was kind of fun to be able to play multiple games. The last game we played, I got blown out by 20 points, and what was cool about it is we could have just set up and played immediately again. It's not like, I'm losing this game and now I'm in it for a ride for another 90 minutes before this is over.
Yeah.
So that is a positive.
I think you bring up a good point, because you kind of have to think about what you're buying the game for. And for us, we've tried to expand our 2-player game library, if you will, but also games that we can take with us. We like to travel a lot, so this is a really easy one that you could take and set up in a hotel room or a lobby or a coffee shop, and play through quickly and still really enjoy it. So I think that's a really good thing to note, because this isn't going to be a play all night kind of game, but that's not really the intention, and certainly not what we bought it for. So if you kind of think of what you're trying to accomplish with it, it definitely hits all those notes for me.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to comparable games.
I don't know. I struggle with this one all the time, and I think like I said, Takedo is the movement is similar, but this being a 2-player game and the building setup, I don't know that I can necessarily think of one that's definitely comparable. Like it's got some with the building placement, you could kind of think even like Carcassonne with the tiles, but the strategy and the is completely different. So I'm sure you've got something in mind. You always do.
Well, I think so the mechanic, you're always chasing whoever's in front positionally, and then you get to take multiple actions depending on how far behind. It's very similar to Kaido, very similar to Patchwork. Laying out the tiles into the city, it's a tile placement game. There is some strategy, some buildings you want to place in the corners, some buildings you want to play in rows or columns, orthogonal placement is important. Some you just put out there. But it's kind of unique, but it's just kind of a tile placement game with variable turn sequence when you get right down to it. There is some randomness because you don't know what buildings are necessarily coming out next. When you build a building, you take that building from the architect, you put it in play, then you draw another building. If you've got gold to spend to do another action, you can spend that gold and take another action. So you don't always know what's coming up next. So there's a little bit of variability in there, but I think Patchwork, Takedo. But the big important difference with Patchwork in this one is there's no Tetris components. You're not trying to build anything.
Yeah.
This is just a 4x5 or a 5x4 grid that you're trying to maximize points on.
Yeah, the placement is pretty simple. There's not a lot of difficulty in the placement rules.
Yeah. All right, let's do overall value. Kind of overall, where would you land on this? So we paid $30 for it.
I would say definitely above average because, like I said before, I was able to get out of this what I wanted, right? I want a quick 2-player game. I want something that's going to be fun. It's going to be variable, something that we could travel with. All of those things, I think, for me, were great. $30, I like I probably would have liked it better at $23 if we had only paid that for it, which you can. So, I'd probably give it a 7 on the value.
Yeah, I look at it this way. 5 games, let's assume 20 minutes apiece. So we're looking at, almost coming up on 2 hours worth of playtime for $30. I don't think I could really go and have beers or cocktails or dinner for 2 hours for $30.
There's nothing you can do for 2 hours for $30 these days.
So, value wise, I think it's, value wise, I think it's totally fair. What it costs to produce these things. Well, the meeples are pretty generic, I like the steel meeples, kind of wooden flat coins.
Steel.
Yeah. The cardboard punch out is nice. It's not anything crazy. I think they're making some money off of this, which they should. I get it. I don't begrudge them that. But for $30, I think it's totally playable. Valued. How far does this rise up the list? Well, it's a great medium weight filler game, and for as long as we're in this COVID pandemic or we're finding ourselves playing 2-player games, I think. I think we'll play it. I don't have any regrets buying it. Am I racing to make the recommendation of people? I don't know that I am. So, it's good.
Your enthusiasm.
Yeah, I don't mean to rain on it. I think it is a good game. I enjoy it when we play it. If I think about Caverna, 2-player Caverna, or if I think about Seven Wonders duels, or I think about Cosmic Encounters,
Cosmic Encounters. I do really like that one.
Those are probably a little bit higher in the rankings. Do I like this a little bit better in Patchwork? Yeah, I think I do. So it's not terrible. Is it my absolute favorite? Am I dying to get it out every time it's a 2-player opportunity? No. But I like playing it, and it's fun. So I think I'll probably come down to 7.
All of that just to agree with me.
Yes, I like to really word it up.
That's about right.
Yeah. I think that's about all for Kristin. If you hold up Glasgow so people can see what we're looking at here.
Glasgow, and don't forget
Action
variable
stickers.
variable setup, super fast gameplay, and tough choices. All the above. It delivered on those three things.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they're tough choices.
Sometimes.
You'll think about it for a little bit. All right. Thanks, everybody. If you like what we're doing, please like or subscribe or leave a comment. All those things help. And we look forward to doing the next video. Okay. Thank you.